So that's how the beak is looking now after he's bone dry. Depending on where you live and what the room's like, it can take, 20 minutes or so for this to dry thoroughly. I used a hairdryer very gently just for this demonstration. I wouldn't recommend doing it all the time because it does dull your paints. So to carry on now, I want to get a slightly soft edge on the join between the black and the yellow in places and a hard edge elsewhere. So we're going to leave finishing the beak for now, because as you can see it's at the first soft stage. We're going to add more detail later on. So let's get on now with the black of his body. So what I'm going to do is re-wet the body because it's very warm today and the whole thing has dried. So to make sure it's bone dry, like I said, I've just given it a bit of a hair dry, because when I re-wet it, you need to be re-wetting a bone dry area. If you try and re-wet a damp area, you will end up with a lot of ugly backgrounds and cabbages. So to re-wet, I'm going to use this big size 10 brush. I could actually use a bigger brush because I just want the water to go on more quickly, but I'm just going to use the brushes that I've mentioned. And I'm going to be wetting the whole area, starting from the yellow and coming all down the unpainted body. The yellow will probably stay put quite well because I'm not scrubbing at it. I'm just laying the water on. And I want this yellow to be wet because I want some of the black to blur up into the shoulder to give us a soft edge. So I'm quickly re-wetting the plumage. You'd be surprised how much water you can put on, especially if you're using cotton rag paper, because it's really much more absorbent than wood pulp paper. Wood pulp paper such as Bockingford and other brands are not as absorbent. Basically, if it doesn't say cotton rag on the packet or the pad, then it isn't cotton rag and it's probably some type of cellulose or wood pulp. The paper I use is Saunders Waterford 100% cotton rag, or Fabriano Artistico, that's a nice one. Then I use the French one Arche. Lots of lovely brands out there. So I wet the whole bird, and again, I don't want it to be running with water, but I just want it to have that shine, which I don't know if the camera's picking up or not. See if I can show it to you. There, you can see the shine on the yellow, can't you? And already the chest is drying out a bit, so I want to tip the water so that it comes into the chest area. So I get a nice, there we are, you can see the shine on the plumage. That's the shine we want. Okay? Crow wet into wet watercolour. So now I'm going to swap to a flat brush, because then I can chisel away at the feathers. So for the feather colour, I'm going to use, we need a big puddle of this, of burnt umber, drag some droplets of water in, and then French ultramarine blue, because blue and brown make a really nice black. I very rarely use black from a tube because it looks a bit dead. This is nice because this separates a little bit on the painting into blue and brown hues. So you've got a black, well, we'll call it a dark. Okay, you've got a dark, that's a mix of blue and brown. Another nice black to mix is deep green with deep red. Alizarin crimson with Windsor green is a fantastic black. You'd be surprised how black that looks. So I'm mixing a lot of this because I've got a lot of bird area plumage to cover. So I'm just going to keep on making my puddle bigger and dragging in some more droplets of water. I don't want it too runny, because otherwise it'll be grey. I want it to have some punch. Right, that should be enough. But I'm just going to check my bird to see if he's still got enough moisture in, and I'd say that he's starting to dry out a little bit, so I'm going to quickly flush in with a few strokes, just an extra top up of moisture before I get this black flowing on, and especially on that shoulder line where I want that nice blend with the black. Okay, so now let's get the black on. So I'm stroking it on in the direction in which the feathers go. And this flat allows me to do little sharp feathers that are sort of protruding from his body a little bit. So that gives us a bit of interest there. I'll zoom in for you. It's a beautiful velvety black. I'm doing it quite strong near the shoulder, as you can see, and I won't do the head just yet. There's a bit of a black line on the head. I won't do that yet because the yellow is still a bit too wet, so I'm going to wait a minute or two until the danger time has passed, until the water has soaked in a little bit more. So when I do drop the black in, it won't flare too far on the yellow of the head. Watercolour is all about timing. It does seem a little bit onerous, you know, when you're first beginning and you think, oh, I'll never get the hang of this, never get the hang of this. But you will if you keep on practicing. With time, you will get it. This is when most watercolourists fail, when they just don't realise how much they need to care about water, and they just think that it's something they can't possibly master. Once you realise what you've got to be aware of, then you know what to get better at, don't you? Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And so these videos, I hope to show you what you need to be aware of, and to reassure you that, you know, you will get there, and it does take a little bit of practice. So that's the black colour gone on all over, and it's a bit patchy, and I've done that on purpose because I don't want it to be a solid block of colour. Now let's have a look at that head. I look at it and I tilt my head myself to see from the light of the window if that's dried sufficiently for me to risk putting this thin sliver of black in, and I think it has. It's okay. So if I zoom in on that, you can see bleeding a little bit. Now if you were at home and you were panicking about that yellow bleed, you can get a brush. I'm going to moisten that little brush, and then I'm going to dry it on a flannel, and I can press that in, roll it, and suck some of that black away from the eye. It's too close to the eye. Again, rinse my brush again, dry it on the flannel, press it in, and take away that black that's getting a bit too close to my eye. Rinse again. Now that's okay, the rest of it. While we're up here, I'm going to use this small little brush to drop in this black edging around his fabulous beak, and this will bleed a little bit as well. So I'm very delicately going to pop that in. I like that it's bleeding a little bit because it gives it a more of a painterly look rather than a drawn look. So I've tapered that away finely. I haven't left a blunt blob there. Okay, I'll just keep an eye on this. If this flares in too far, I'll just be at the ready. Actually, I'm going to call in another little flat brush that I've got. Here it is. I'm going to moisten that really well in my pot water, dry it on the flannel, and now I've got another dry brush, thirsty brush that I can just tap in lightly and pick up any excess flares. You know, it's not perfect, but it does what I need it to do. So wipe that brush again, pinch it between the flannel and squeeze it like that, and keep the shape sharp like that, and then you can just accurately tame that watercolour. So let's get back to the body before it dries too much. Now I want to start lifting out some highlights on the feathers. So I'm just pretending that the light is coming from the left hand side, and we're going to lift out some shadows. So with my flat brush, I'm going to rinse it really well in my jug. Very well. I have to bang it on the base of the jug to get rid of all the black paint that's in there. Shake it off, then dry the shaft, and always dry down like that. You know, don't ruffle the hairs back in the wrong direction. Now I'm going to scissor it with my fingers. So that now is a sharp brush. So let's drag out and pressing the brush in really hard, and let's take out a feather there. So we've still got some sort of grey underneath, which looks a nice contrast. Rinsing my brush again, dry my brush, scissor it so that it's straight and flat, so we get a nice lift. Let's do it one more time because it does seep in a little bit. Just drag that out like that, nice curve. Rinse your brush again, rinse all the black paint off because it will be full. So let's just take out another. I'm just going to press the brush so it's touching the paper up, and drag, and then lift off and twist. You can practice doing this on a bit of scrap paper as well. You could just paint a lot of black on a piece of scrap paper and practice pressing your brush in flat and then drag and twist and see what lifts you get. You can soon build feathers this way. Now I really like the feathers here. So this top one is separate from the one underneath, isn't it? So we'll drag that down. It's dried a little bit, so it's not lifting off as easily. And again, we'll do what we can with it as it's drying. Then I like this one is separated. Well, so we can see two feathers now, can't we? That one and that one and that one. Actually, there's three. So 1, 2, 3. So let's just separate this one a bit more. So press that clean, thirsty brush in and curve it round to the tip of that, and you're just separating it a little bit more, it's a bit more readable. Press down and take that, make a highlight really on that curve there of the bottom feather. Right, and then I like the central line for the actual, you know, the sort of quill, the spine of the feather. I need to rinse, and each time you make that sharp edge, it's got to be sharp and flat, otherwise you won't get the accurate lift off like this. And I think that's about it. I'm not going to do any more lifting. So we got some contrast. This is darker, this is paler. I'll put the hard shadow in like I've got there, under there when it's all dry. Oh, actually, I brought this wing down too far. Look, see, it's a bit higher up there. Never mind. When I can paint that body and lift it out a bit higher. So I'll lift it out a bit higher now. Press it in and drag to a point. I can always correct this, well, I will do in the next clip. So that's how he's looking at the moment. And we have got a nice soft join, a soft transition, a soft edge between the neck and the actual shoulder of the black feathers. So we'll leave that dry completely and we'll come back in the next clip.